Eviction moratorium ruled unconstitutional. Largest tsunami of evictions in U.S. history incoming. Absolutely it is. I stand by that. I did a video many months ago and I talked about 4 pieces to the puzzle. One piece being the eviction piece. And at that time, from all the internal data and analytic groups that we were looking at, they were saying roughly 4 million plus. I made a bold statement. I said it's going to be 10 million plus. Over 17 million Americans are behind on their rent and mortgages. Unfortunately, I stand by that today. Over 10 million people are facing eviction in the United States of America. They're behind. Since the federal moratorium was instituted last summer, landlords are very distressed. Millions upon millions of Americans are behind on their mortgage payments and they're not paying at all. So, I see 2 sides to this tragedy. The tenant side, on the tenant side, millions upon millions of Americans are being forced out on the street. On the landlord side, they may lose their buildings. Many people think landlords are loaded with money. You have some with a 400 unit building, but you know how many investors they usually have, in my experience? And you have someone like me that maybe has 5 or 10 buildings, and you know that I have loans on some of those buildings, and I'm invested outside the state as well, and some people aren't paying. I was doing rocking very well, 11% not paying, up to 8 months, and now few aren't paying at all. I can't emphasize enough, you need to have that conversation with your tenants, work out a deal with partial rent, let them know the ramifications of not paying to their credit, and they're gonna ruin their credit. So it's a tragedy on both sides. I'm not, Gavin Newsom didn't say to me, hey Tim, don't worry about your property taxes. We're gonna give you a lump sum of $250,000 for free to get through the pain. As a landlord, I got property taxes, HOA, maintenance costs. I might have a mortgage. Okay, I pay a property manager for some stuff. We have multiple property managers. So it all works together. So there's 2 sides to the story. I see the landlord side and I see the tenant side. It's terrible what's going on. I didn't think this would be going on for over a year now. It's insane. It's a twilight zone. So this is what's interesting that I want to go over. A federal judge ruled that the federal moratorium was unconstitutional. Federal judge in the eastern state of Texas. Just wanted to read it to you. It's interesting. It was a suit brought by landlords and property managers. And he made an interesting comment. The federal government cannot say that it has ever been before invoked its power over interstate commerce to impose a residential eviction moratorium. Baker wrote, noting that it did not do so during the Spanish flu pandemic, nor during the Great Depression. The federal government has not claimed such a power at any point during our nation's history until last year. Here's the key. Baker didn't issue an injunction, meaning they should overturn the moratorium. He left it up to the defendants to withdraw the moratorium on their own. I don't think they will, but the federal moratorium ends March 31st. So that could happen in a few weeks, or they'll just let the federal eviction moratorium end. Now, do you think that means, the federal eviction moratorium ends, boom, you can evict? No. Guess what? States have their own moratoriums in place. And Baker noted that those are constitutional, so renters in those states will have at least some protection moving forward. So in the state of California, that's extended till September. Other states where we have some property, it's going to end. The federal moratorium ends, it ends. So, in California, it's a little different story here. But for most of the country, there's going to be a major change in a major way. So if we look at the data, let's see, last month, Moody's Analytics and Urban Institute said that 10 plus million, it's going to be more in their opinion, are paying or are being evicted, and they're behind on the rent. Moreover, a typical delinquent renter is almost 4 months, 5,600 behind on monthly rent and utility payments as of January. This is the key. To put this in perspective, approximately 7 million households lost their homes to foreclosure during the darkest days of the global financial crisis. We all remember that. The researchers noted we have 10 million families facing a similar fate over a matter of months. So even though the rental moratorium remains in place, for example, in California, We're going to see millions upon millions of households evicted in 2021. It will be the largest tsunami of evictions in U.S. history. What are the ramifications of that we should all be worried about? Homelessness, crime's going to go up. We've already seen that with letting people out of prison, 8,000 plus people. We've already seen crime explode, let's say over California, Chicago, and all the city areas. That's a concern. Even before this eviction, 8 million to 10 million people have already been put into poverty since this crisis. This is just going to add to that madness. So the pain is just beginning. So let's, what are we going to do? We need to work together and get through this, but people on both sides are politicizing this, and it's terrible because people are losing their shirts. It's terrible. And I did a video on the reset. There's been many resets, so the key is it's not new. But the rich are going to get richer. It's all about the haves and the haves-mores. Hopefully some cooler heads will prevail, and we can get this economy humming again. The greatest economy in the world, the 5th largest economy in the state of California. I believe in California. I'm going to keep some stuff here, but I'm invested horizontally outside the state. Over 90% were invested. We saw the train ending. We didn't like the way that, this state has not been friendly to small businesses. But there's some aspects of California that I love. I have a love-hate relationship with California. Because I get emotional, I have to bring other people in to make decisions for me when it comes to investing in California because I don't have a level head. But in other markets outside the country, I'm focused. California does something, so I got to bring in some experts to help me. So let's talk about, just kind of trickle into bankruptcies because it kind of piggybacks off the eviction piece. And this is interesting. The number of Chapter 11 bankruptcies filed in 2020 was at least 30% higher than in the previous 4 years, 30% higher. So bankruptcies filed by entertainment companies in 2020 nearly quadrupled. Filings nearly tripled for oil and gas companies, doubled for computer and software companies, and were up 50% or more for restaurant owners, of course. Real estate companies and retailers, compared with 2019 data from the research firm, shows there were 5,236 Chapter 11 filings in 2019, but over 7,000 last year, at least 30% higher than any other previous year. That's what the economic recovery looks like, right? Unbelievable. So some people would argue that the U.S. economy is in the midst of a meltdown and there's a whole lot more pain ahead. It is melting down a little bit and there is going to be more pain. There are some bright spots in the chaos. Wall Street took a hit last week, down 469 points. You saw a lot of movement in NASDAQ. Tech stocks rebounded. There was a large sell-off. Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon. So there's been some volatility. I don't think a stock market crash is imminent. Let's not go there yet. But there are some warning signs that we're witnessing that should not be ignored. So we're all hoping the pandemic's going to fade, but it is inevitable, and this is the key. I think it's fading down. There's going to be more trigger events in 2021. It's going to be key to identify those trigger events. And unfortunately, people at the bottom of the economic food chain are going to be crushed. And it is a big redistribution of wealth, and people at the top are cleaning up like dogs and cats, man. They're killing it. So let's talk about a few little bankruptcies, just interesting. A few little examples. A New Albany, Ohio music school offering piano and guitar violin lessons racked up nearly $1 million in loans and $35,000 in credit card debt. We talk about Neiman Marcus. I was in Washington, D.C., walking down, all boarded up. It's just big name retailers have made headlines with bankruptcy filings and restructuring. Providence, Rhode Island, small little restaurant, great place, received over $450,000 in PPP funds to help workers, but they still had to close their doors. This is an interesting place. A nonprofit overseeing Kit Carson Home and Museum in New Mexico welcomed visitors to learn from famous frontiersmen. Just listed $17,000 only in assets, and even after selling every bone knife, buffalo hide apron, and muskets, and getting rid of all their inventory, it had 17 grand in assets. It's just devastating. Economists are predicting strong economic growth this year overall, but why? Bankruptcy Day shows that despite the $3.7 trillion in federal stimulus that we got last year, and another $1.9 trillion on the way from the Joe Biden administration, certain industries are particularly vulnerable still right now. It may take years to recover enough to pay their bills. Now, businesses hit hardest by the pandemic. There were a few on here that are obvious, but a few that aren't. So if you look at this, 2019, real estate, restaurant, retail, oil and gas, and entertainment. Real estate, big time. Real estate, 605 businesses, 2020, 985. Why is that? A lot of brokerages contracting. We talk about commercial real estate, office space. It's going to be devastating. Companies are saying, wow, we can have half our workforce work from home. We don't need this office space. We can have everyone work from home. You're going to see mass trickle down. I have a commercial real estate guy that I know that sold all his buildings in California. His commercial agent and him both moved to Boise because that's his biggest client. The commercial agent left. They're in Boise, Idaho, setting up shop. A lot of people are selling their assets in California. You have a net negative migration coming in. You still have a lot of super wealthy staying here. I do believe in California. But the problem with California, the fundamentals are flawed right now. I don't want to believe it. I'm talking to people, but they are flawed. They're not friendly to small businesses. You got a $100 million company, you'd be a fool to stay here. You make under $1 million a year, you'd probably be a fool to stay here. But you can make it work. There's things you can do. But they have to be friendly to small businesses going forward in the future here if California's going to survive. It's the 5th largest economy. There's a lot of opportunity here. They got to realize what they're doing is making a mistake. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to realize that mistake for 2 to 3 years, but we'll see. So, real estate is taking a hit. I know brokerages that are closing shop. They're letting people go. You talk about Compass, Douglas Elliman, other places are restructuring. You have these new models like EXP brokerage I work with. They were ahead of the curve virtually on some things. So, a lot of these companies are restructuring. And when you talk about commercial sector, residential sector, it was hit hard. So 985 closings. Restaurant 400, up to 660. Oil and gas 236, up to 785. And entertainment 132, 524 entertainment companies. That's devastating. These numbers are devastating. So other sectors that have not fared so badly, one might expect only 77 hotels or gaming companies filed for protection in 2020, down from 92 in 2019, the year when the tourism industry thrived. But we know they got money, those hotels, right? They got some cash in the bailout to weather the storm. Here's an interesting, a lot of people know this, but it needs to be said. Bankruptcies don't cause damage to the economy, said Ed Flynn, a consultant to the American Bankruptcy Institute. The damage has already been occurred when the bankruptcy is filed. Higher bankruptcies is more of a symptom of economic harm than the cause. I agree with you, Ed. I agree with you. It makes sense. So, could rebound. This is interesting about restaurants. Restaurants that are having a hard time, it's just a question of when they're going to file. That's Mr. Gonzalez in Los Angeles. When? He's not too optimistic. He's saying they're all screwed. So, and this is the last. When we talk about over the summer, chain retailers became some of the biggest names to file Chapter 11. J. Crew, Neiman Marcus, J.C. Penney, Brooks Brothers, Lloyd's and Taylor. There was an average, in June and July, there were over 2 corporate filings a day. A day. And now it's ticked up again because this is still going on. So, when's it gonna end? Out of control. So I just want to do a short video on that, evictions and the bankruptcy piece. I think there's gonna be a lot more pain in 2021 here. But we can be hopeful and we can be optimistic about what's happening. I think this is important stuff to talk about. I think everyone should be talking about it and researching and what's going on to make the right money moves. because you're going to have to be creative and think between the lines to make money in this market right now, and that means multiple revenue streams. So thanks for your time. Take care.